They say that a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing, so I'm going to use a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of music theory that I do know, or at least think I know, and come up with a walking bass line for a progression, and then I will show you why I think it's correct, and any trolls out there that disagree, you can certainly set me straight, but let me show you what this is about. I'm going to build this over a basic chord progression of a C minor 7 to B flat 7, that's dominant chord, to an A flat 7, and a G7. So it's going to be over a minor 7, and the rest will be dominant 7 chords. So the bass line will sound like this. So the reason I think this works, and I've heard many people talk about, upbeats and downbeats, and in, I guess especially jazz, they're walking all over the place. And so, to the best of my knowledge, on all of the downbeats, you definitely want to play a note that is actually common to the scale or the chord that you're in. In any of the upbeats, man, you can play pretty much any wrong note or any weird note, keeping in mind that you can also play the right notes on the upbeats, but definitely on the downbeats, play all of the right notes. So this is how I diagrammed out the walking bass line that I just did, but before I get into this, I realized that before I get into how to play a walking bass line, that you kind of have to know what classifies a note as a good note and what classifies as a bad note. So a slight deviation from the discussion is going to be necessary here. We're going to turn and take a quick look at intervals for just a second. I believe that intervals, the understanding of intervals, is like one of the most important things in understanding music theory. So I tend to see intervals as they relate to the root note of a chord or a scale. In this particular example, this is the neck of a bass guitar. The headstock would be right here. The floor is that way, and you are this way. So in relation to the one or the root, the octave, which is also the root, is down 2 and over 2. Hopefully you already know this one. The next most important note in forming a chord is going to be the fifth, and it's down 1 over 2. So if you've ever played chess, that I like to lock into my mind as it relates to the way the knight moves on a chessboard. Now, the early guitar player will play the 1, the 5, and the 8 together. Da-da-da, power chord, woo, mom, I know how to play the guitar, I'm going to quit school, I'm going to be a rock star. Oh yeah. So you better know a little bit more than that. There is no distinction between a major or a minor chord when you play that power chord. You crank up the distortion and who can tell the difference? So anyways, the note directly below the 1 is the 4th degree of the scale. When I'm calling out these numbers, what I really mean is if this is the 1 and you have a scale of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, they all correspond to that note right there. The 4 is the do, re, mi, fa, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the 5 is the do, re, mi, fa, so. The 5th degree of the scale is right there. So the reason I wanted to start with this particular pattern is you want to lock this in your mind because these notes never move. When there's a 1 there, there's always an 8 there. When there's a 1 there, there is always a 4 there. It's called a perfect fourth. There is no major fourth or minor fourth. There is no major fifth or minor fifth. There is, however, a note between the two of those that you wouldn't, well, in jazz you would call it a flat 5, but it's called a tritone. And I'll show you on this next slide. That's going to have a T right there. So let's move on to the next one. So this shot's got quite a bit more going on. But I wanted to keep the 1, the 4, the 5, and the 8, and we are going to look at how all of these other notes relate to those other notes there. Now remember the T is the tritone, so that's always right in between the 4 and the 5. That's a great note. That's if you're a blues, if you're playing a blues scale, that's that blue note.
that walks between the 4 and the 5. So that's a great passing tone. So when we get back to a walking bass line, you already probably know how to play that one. And remember when I said you play the power chord, how there is no distinction between major or minor. You have to add a third, so a do, re, mi. You have to add the mi, so 1, 2, 3, to get to distinguish if it's a major chord or a minor chord. In this case, right there, the major third, if you play the major third along with the 1, you'll get a very, very major sounding combination. So if you remember, if you play an open G chord, how your second finger is on the 1 and your index finger is on that major third, that gives that G chord a major quality. If you were to play the 1 and you play a minor third with it, it'll get a very minor sounding quality. So the next most important interval in music is going to be the 7. So if this is the 1 or the 8, you can call it an 8 and you count backwards, the 7 is going to be to the left of the 1 or to the left of the 8. Again, 1 fret apart is going to be a major 7, and 2 frets apart will be the minor 7. A 1, a 3, a 5, and a 7 are the main ingredients to a chord. You can start stacking other notes on it to get more elaborate. I mean, for some of you, even the 7 chords are going to be kind of elaborate. For instance, in the example that we're playing, I'm playing a minor 7th chord. That means I have a minor chord, but I'm adding the minor 7 to give it that extra flavor. If you were to play a major chord and add the major 7, that would be called a major 7th chord. The chords I'm using in the example, however, are dominant 7 chords, and what that is a major chord and adding the minor 7, and it really gives it that edgy feel. So that's how in blues guitar and in lots of jazz there's that dominant, they call it the dominant chord, when you have the minor 7 played on top of a major chord. So now we've covered pretty much everything except for the 6. The 6 is in relation to the 4, just as the 3 was in relation to the 1. So that's an easy way that I like to remember it, because the minor third in relation to the 1 is the same as the minor 6 in relation to the 4. Major third to the 1, major 6 to the 1. To further illustrate the pattern of this, the very symmetrical pattern, I went ahead and put a 6-string guitar on here, and again the headstock is down on this end, the floor is over there, you're over here. The 1 is here, the octave, which I called an 8 or a 1, is there. The 1, 4, 5, 8, or 1, 4, 5. Now remember, the guitar's got that weird tuning on between the 2nd and 3rd string, which throws the next, it throws a little bit out of whack, but by now you've probably already figured that out. But then once you get to there, there's the 1, the 4, and the 5 again. When you get all of this figured out, you'll notice that you've got, once you start with just the basic pattern, you can fill in the entire fretboard. And again, once you learn the notes on a couple of the strings, you can figure out what the other notes are as well. But we're not talking notes so much as we are talking degrees and numbers of intervals. So getting back to the lesson at hand, I just wanted to point out that in this walking bass run here, these numbers do not indicate intervals. This is just the order that I played them on the part that you just heard. So for instance, I played from here to 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 here, and then back to 1, which then goes on this. We won't talk about that till just a second. So C minor 7 was the chord that we played. Remember, every chord has a 1, an interval of a 4th right below it, an interval of a 5th, an octave, there's the tritone. This in this case would be the major third. This would be the major 7, and that's the minor 7, or the dominant. Now remember I said in a 7 chord, in a minor chord, that will be a good note. This would have to be a passing tone then, because in this chord is not played a major 7. So we want to make sure that the white notes are all played on the upbeat. So for instance, if I counted this out, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So let's look how this leads right into the B flat. So if this note right here was C, because in the example we played, we're actually playing C minor 7. So it was 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, which now becomes this one right here on the B flat, dominant 7. So now we're back, we're going to use exactly the same pattern on this one, and I'll show you why. So 1 and 2 and, that's that tritone, 3 and, that's the major 6, 4 and, going to end up on 1. So this 1 becomes the new 1 of the A flat 7. Now this one we're going to switch up just a little bit, because when we get to the end of the run, remember G dominant 7 is only a half step away from the A flat dominant 7. So we're going to have to come down to that on the 1, which would this note here is the major 7th of the A flat run, but because it is also the 1 of the G7, G dominant 7, we're going to flip-flop the order of these two notes from what we did here. So in this case, it'll be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So when I got to the G7, I wanted to do a chromatic run instead of something like that. And this is going to be more of a turnaround that brings us back to the C minor 7. And I wanted to do a chromatic, so in this case, in the G7 dominant chord, this note would be a 2. That's the minor 3rd, which would have also been over here next to this one. That's the major 3rd. So remember in the key of, or in the G chord, you have a 1, a 3, and a 5. So we wanted to make sure those were the good notes. This is a minor 2. It's a passing note. It's not a bad note. It's just not a downbeat note, and neither is the minor 3rd. And again, the tritone could possibly be played on the downbeat, but you're always safe playing on the upbeat. So in this case, it went 1, 2, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The reason I did that, I mean, I probably could have flip-flopped those and it would have sounded fine, but it actually just sounds better to me. And keep in mind, I just made this up by using this technique. There's so many different ways to walk this around, but this is just the way I chose to do it, just to show you how the intervals play in determining what notes are downbeats and what notes are upbeats. So I really wanted just to do a lesson that was not in tab, that you could just learn and play and it sounds cool and everything, but to try to give you a couple tools that I've kind of learned along the way to help you understand just a little bit more about music theory and how you can just come up with your own stuff and know why it works.